The Fallout universe is an alternate history, a timeline that's split from our own in the aftermath of World War II. The key difference? The point of divergence is that the world of Fallout never invented the transistor in its widespread commercial form. Instead of the miniaturization of electronics and the creation of microprocessors, scientific progress charged down the path of perfecting vacuum tubes and, most importantly, the miniaturization of nuclear technology. This path led to a world of retrofuturism and atom punk. Clunky computer terminals, robot butlers powered by atomic batteries, cars with nuclear fission engines, and laser weapons became reality, while information technology remained stuck at a 1960s level. This gamble on the atom would ultimately lead civilization to its fiery doom. By the mid-21st century, humanity faced the inevitable end of the age of consumption. The world's oil reserves were running dry, causing the global economy to collapse. The first domino to fall was Europe, which invaded the Middle East in 2052 in a desperate bid to seize the last remaining oil fields. These resource wars quickly spiraled into unmanageable chaos. In 2053, terrorists obliterated Tel Aviv with a nuclear device, and a year later, the United Nations, admitting its own powerlessness, was officially disbanded. Amidst global panic and an epidemic known as the New Plague, the United States retreated into staunch isolationism. It was during this period, in 2054, that the sinister Project Safehouse began. The Vault-Tec Corporation, commissioned by a shadow government, the Enclave, began constructing a network of fallout shelters. Officially, they were meant to save the nation. In reality, they were staging grounds for twisted experiments. By 2060, the war in Europe ended in mutual annihilation. The Middle East was a radioactive wasteland. The European Commonwealth had dissolved, and only two hungry giants remained on the world stage: the USA and China. In the winter of 2066, China, suffocating from its own energy crisis, struck first, invading Alaska to seize Anchorage. To secure its supply lines to the front, America committed an act of unprecedented brutality: the annexation of Canada. From 2067 to 2072, the U.S. Army crushed its northern neighbors' resistance, mercilessly executing partisans and stripping the country of its resources for the war effort. Technology provided the turning point in the prolonged conflict. While the front lines were locked in a stalemate, Pentagon contractors sparked a revolution. General Atomics deployed combat robots, and engineers at WestTech created power armor. The appearance of the T-45D model, and later the perfected T-51B, turned American soldiers into walking tanks. By January 2077, the U.S. had not only driven the Chinese out of Alaska, but had also begun a full-scale invasion of mainland China, rapidly advancing on Beijing. The cornered dragon was desperate, and the world held its breath, awaiting the inevitable end. While patriotic propaganda played on television, the country was rotting from within. Corporations like Robco Industries, Vault-Tec, WestTech, and Poseidon Energy wielded power comparable to the government itself. Food riots were a daily occurrence. Major cities were under martial law. Dissenters were branded communist spies and sent to concentration camps. The America of 2077 was a police state, winning a glorious war abroad while losing the battle for survival at home. October 23, 2077, a Saturday morning. At 9:13 a.m. Eastern Time, NORAD detects the launch of several nuclear missiles. At 9:17 a.m., the President of the United States gives the order for a full-scale retaliatory strike. At 9:26 a.m., the first warhead reaches U.S. soil. Over the next 2 hours, the world as they knew it ceased to exist. Billions perished, cities vanished, continents burned. The question of who launched first remains one of the lore's greatest mysteries. Was it a desperate China? Was it a preemptive strike by the US? Or, as some sources hint, was it a malfunction in an artificial intelligence system? The answer no longer matters. The result was final. To the average American, Vault-Tec's vaults were the last bastion of hope. In reality, they were a monstrous, inhuman scientific program officially designated the Societal Preservation Program. Of the 122 vaults constructed, only 17 were control vaults designed for the genuine preservation of a population. The other 105 were testing grounds for social and biological experiments. The Enclave's goal was simple: to gather data on human behavior under extreme conditions. This data would be used for the future colonization of other planets or for re-establishing a pure American society on Earth after all the mutants had died out. One of the most cynical examples was the fate of the residents of Vault 12, located beneath Bakersfield. They were promised safety, but the architects deliberately designed the vault door so it would never seal properly. The goal was to study the long-term effects of low-level radiation on a seemingly protected population. The result was as predictable as it was horrifying. Radiation slowly, day by day, cooked the inhabitants, transforming the entire population into an army of burned yet living ghouls. It was they who, upon emerging, founded the legendary City of the Dead, Necropolis. An equally terrible fate awaited the residents of Vault 87 in Virginia. Here, Vault-Tec conducted direct experiments with the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV. People seeking refuge from the bombs were forcibly locked in sealed chambers and exposed to concentrated FEV. The result wasn't evolution, but degradation. It was from the depths of this vault that the first East Coast supermutants crawled forth. Enormous, mindless monsters who would terrorize the capital wasteland for centuries, searching for more green stuff to create more of their kind. Sometimes, the experiments pitted man against nature itself, as was the case in Vault 22 in the Mojave Desert. This facility was entrusted to the nation's best agronomists and botanists, tasked with creating crops that could thrive in a nuclear winter. But the experiments spun out of control. A genetically engineered parasitic fungus escaped the labs, infesting the ventilation system. The spores entered the scientists' lungs, transforming them from the inside out into walking plant colonies, spore carriers, mindless, aggressive creatures that now guard the lush but deadly jungle inside the vault. In other cases, Vault-Tec played with social structures, deliberately engineering conflict. The population of Vault 15 was selected with devilish precision. People from radically different cultures, ideologies, and beliefs were sealed in a confined space to study the dynamics of social friction. As expected, the society fractured under the strain. Factions went to war with one another, and when the doors finally opened, what emerged were not civilized survivors, but vicious gangs of raiders, the Jackals, the Vipers, and the Great Khans, who became the scourge of California for years to come. Even more sadistic ingenuity was on display in Vault 95. The shelter was filled with people suffering from severe drug addiction, who were offered a unique rehabilitation program. For 5 years, the residents lived in sobriety and order, building a healthy community and supporting one another. But the experiment required a stress test. At a predetermined time, a secret stash, packed to the brim with chems and alcohol, automatically unlocked. Their willpower was shattered instantly. The vault descended into a hell of violence and madness, consuming everyone inside. Some vaults became traps of time and reality. In Vault 111, residents were tricked into cryogenic pods under the guise of decontamination, frozen alive to study the effects of suspended animation. Nearly all of them died in their sleep when life support systems were remotely shut down. In Vault 112, the residents became toys for a deranged overseer, Dr. Stanislaus Braun. Placed in virtual reality pods, they were doomed to live eternally in a simulation of a perfect pre-war town, Tranquility Lane, where Brawn, like a cruel god, would kill and resurrect them over and over for his own twisted amusement. Against this parade of madness, the fate of Vault 13 seems a grim irony. It was one of the few control vaults where no experiment was planned, just 200 years of isolation. But it was here, where everything was supposed to go right, that the system failed. The breakdown of a simple water chip forced the Overseer to break isolation and send one person, the Vault Dweller, out into the wasteland, setting in motion a chain of events that would change the history of the post-nuclear world forever. The planet's ecosystem was irrevocably altered by two primary factors: global radiation contamination and the release of the Forced Evolutionary Virus, FEV. FEV was originally a pre-war West Tech project called the Tan Immunity Virion Project. Its goal was to create a virus that would rewrite DNA, making American soldiers immune to any disease or Chinese biological weapon. However, the military saw its potential for creating super soldiers. Experiments were conducted at the Mariposa military base in California. FEV works by editing an organism's DNA, accelerating evolution, and triggering uncontrollable mutations. It enhances existing traits but also causes sterility and frequently a sharp decline in intelligence. The release of FEV into the atmosphere after Mariposa was bombed created many of the wasteland's most monstrous creatures. A catalog of wasteland denizens. Ghouls. Not everyone dies from radiation. Some undergo ghoulification. Their skin sloughs off and soft tissues, nose, ears, necrotize, but their cells stop aging, granting them a practical form of immortality. Ghouls fall into two categories. Sane ghouls. They retain their personality and intellect. They are outcasts, suffering from rampant prejudice, but have built their own settlements like Necropolis, Underworld, and Goodneighbor. Feral ghouls. Their brains have been destroyed by radiation, turning them into aggressive, zombie-like creatures that attack anything that moves. For many sane ghouls, the prospect of going feral is their greatest fear. Super mutants. The direct result of FEV infection. They are massive, muscular humanoids with green or gray skin, immune to disease and radiation. Their intelligence varies wildly depending on the FEV strain and the subject's pre-mutation radiation exposure. The Master's strain, West Coast. Created by Richard Gray, the Master, at the Mariposa base, they are generally more intelligent and capable of complex speech, but are completely sterile. Vault 87 strain, East Coast, a less stable version of FEV. These super mutants are dumber, more aggressive, and most terrifyingly, continue to grow larger and stronger throughout their lives, eventually becoming gigantic behemoths. Deathclaws, the apex predators of the wasteland. They were created before the war by genetically engineering Jackson's chameleons. The goal was to create the perfect close-quarters reconnaissance unit. They are fast, armored, incredibly strong, and intelligent hunters. Centaurs, one of the Master's most sickening creations. They are the result of throwing multiple humans and animals, mostly dogs, into the FEV vats together. They are a writhing mass of flesh, human limbs, and heads on spider-like legs. Cazadores, giant mutated tarantula hawk wasps engineered in the pre-war Big MT research facility. Their venom is notoriously toxic. Mantis, rad scorpions, yao guai, rad roaches. Examples of local fauna mutated to monstrous sizes by radiation and FEV. Even the flora has changed. The strange vine that grew from the Vault 22 experiments has spread across the Mojave wasteland, and the sinister strangler bloom is taking over the swamps of Appalachia. On the ashes of civilization, new societies rose, each with its own ideology, army, and vision for the future. Understanding these factions is the key to understanding the politics and conflicts of the Fallout world. The Brotherhood of Steel. If there is one symbol that embodies the military might of the post-nuclear world, it is a Brotherhood of Steel knight, encased in gleaming power armor. This is the most technologically advanced and xenophobic organization in the wasteland, born in the first days after the Great War from an act of treason and mutiny. The Brotherhood's founder, U.S. Army Captain Roger Maxson, was stationed at the secret Mariposa military base, where government scientists were conducting horrific experiments with the forced evolutionary virus on human prisoners. Upon discovering the truth, Maxson executed the scientists, declared his secession from the United States, and led his soldiers and their families to the safety of the Lost Hills bunker before the bombs fell. There, within concrete walls, a new ideology was born, codified in the Codex. The Brotherhood of Steel believes that humanity, having burned the world once, cannot be trusted with advanced technology. They have become a technocratic, knightly order whose sacred mission is to confiscate any and all advanced tech, be it laser rifles, medical schematics, or artificial intelligence, and hoard it in their bunkers, away from the savages of the wasteland. Their society is rigidly hierarchical. Wise elders rule over chapters, elite paladins wage war, knights and scribes maintain the technology and preserve knowledge, and initiates merely hope to one day join the ranks. The Brotherhood's history is one of internal conflict. Originally an intensely isolationist sect on the West Coast, they refused to accept outsiders. However, an expedition to the East Coast, led by Elder Owen Lyons, caused an ideological schism. Lyons, witnessing the suffering in the capital wasteland, broke with dogma and began protecting civilians from mutants, an act for which he was condemned by the Western leadership. Years later, the young and ambitious Elder Arthur Maxson, a descendant of the founder, reunited the fractured chapter. By 2287, he had returned the Brotherhood to the hardline traditions of the Codex, declaring a crusade against all technological abominations, super mutants, ghouls, and especially synths, whom he considers the single greatest threat to humanity. The Enclave. While the Brotherhood of Steel was founded by deserters, the Enclave are the direct descendants of the pre-war U.S. government, a shadow cabinet of political and corporate elites who prepared for the apocalypse in advance. Surviving the Great War in luxurious isolated shelters, most famously a Poseidon oil rig in the Pacific Ocean, they preserved not only their lives, but also their ambition to rule the world. For the Enclave, the war never ended. They consider themselves the only legitimate authority in America and the only pure humans left alive. The Enclave's ideology is built on a fascistic belief in genetic purity. Anyone born in the wasteland, exposed to even background levels of radiation, is considered genetic trash, a mutant to be exterminated. Wielding technology that surpasses even pre-war standards, including advanced APA and Hellfire power armor, plasma weaponry, and a fleet of vertibirds, they plan to execute Project Purity. This genocidal plan involved releasing a modified FEV strain into the atmosphere, which would have killed all mutated life on the planet, clearing it for true Americans. Despite their technological superiority, the Enclave has been repeatedly defeated by the heroes of the wasteland. In 2024-1, the Chosen One destroyed their oil rig and assassinated President Dick Richardson. Decades later on the East Coast, the Lone Wanderer and the Brotherhood of Steel crushed their remnants at Raven Rock, where the organization was being run by an AI calling itself President John Henry Eden. The Enclave remains a dark memory, the most dangerous, technologically advanced, and inhuman force to ever threaten the survival of post-war humanity. The New California Republic, NCR. Compared to the technocrats and fascists, the New California Republic represents a sincere attempt to resurrect old-world civilization and its democratic institutions. The NCR story is one of incredible growth. It began as the tiny village of Shady Sands, founded by dwellers from Vault 15, and grew into the largest nation-state in post-nuclear America. Under its first leader, Aradesh, and with the help of the legendary Vault Dweller, the Republic united disparate settlements into a federation of 5 states, complete with its own constitution, Congress, and currency. The NCR strives to bring back a familiar way of life. They rebuild railways, provide electricity, collect taxes, and print their own money, the NCR dollar. Their standing army, the largest in the wasteland, offers relative safety to its citizens, and its elite rangers have become a symbol of frontier justice. However, in trying to rebuild an old-world democracy, they have also resurrected its old-world vices. By the time of the battle for Hoover Dam, the NCR is plagued by rampant corruption, suffocating bureaucracy, and the influence of Brahmin barons, wealthy oligarchs who lobby their interests in the Senate. Under President Aaron Kimball and General Lee Oliver, the Republic has fallen into a trap of imperial overreach, expanding its territory faster than it can manage or protect it. In its quest to bring civilization to the savage lands of the Mojave, the NCR risks collapsing under its own weight, torn between its ideals of freedom and the harsh realities of holding power. Caesar's Legion. East of the Colorado River, like a dark reflection of the NCR, lies the domain of Caesar's Legion, a brutal slave empire built on blood and iron discipline. This monstrous state was born from the mind of Edward Sallow, a former follower of the apocalypse, who, after being captured by Arizona tribals, concluded that democracy was a failed ideology, and only a totalitarian dictatorship could impose order on the chaos. Using his knowledge of ancient Roman history, he forged 86 warring tribes into a single, terrifying army, erasing their cultural identities and demanding absolute loyalty to him alone, to Caesar. The Legion's philosophy is based on Hegelian dialectics. Caesar sees the NCR as the thesis, a corrupt, decaying democracy, and his Legion as the antithesis, a disciplined, ruthless tyranny. He believes their inevitable clash will produce a synthesis, a new, perfect society. The Legion utterly rejects the dependencies of the old world. Chems, alcohol, and advanced technology that replace human strength are forbidden. Medicine is for the weak, and women are reduced to the status of slaves and breeding stock. The Legion's war machine is terrifyingly effective. Legionnaires, raised in a cult of war, have no fear of death and will charge machine guns with machetes. The hierarchy is simple and brutal. At the top is the son of Mars, Caesar. His will is carried out by his fearsome legates, like the infamous Lanius, and his army is composed of slave soldiers. The Legion does not build cities, only military camps, yet its lands are brutally safe. There are no raiders because even bandits fear the wrath of the bull. The Institute. To the people of the bombed-out Boston Commonwealth, the Institute is not an organization, but a boogeyman, a myth mothers use to frighten their children. This deeply enigmatic faction originated with the surviving scientists of the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, CIT, who took refuge in an underground bunker and spent 2 centuries in total isolation, dedicating themselves to science. Their motto, "Mankind Redefined," reflects their arrogant dismissal of the world above. To the Institute, the surface is a dead wasteland inhabited by savages, a failed experiment not worth saving. The Institute's greatest achievement, and its greatest sin, is the creation of synths, artificial humans. Evolving from primitive robots to third-generation biomechanical beings indistinguishable from people, synths have become their perfect servants and spies. The Institute, led by a mysterious director known only as Father, uses the surface as a giant laboratory, kidnapping people for experiments and replacing them with synth doubles, sowing an atmosphere of absolute paranoia among the survivors. Technologically, the Institute is centuries ahead of everyone else. They are the only faction to have mastered teleportation, allowing their agents, the deadly coursers, to appear from nowhere and vanish in an instant. Their labs gleam with sterile white light, they grow genetically modified food, and they produce laser weaponry of unparalleled power. But behind this utopian facade lies a cold, scientific cynicism. To the Institute, the people of the wasteland are merely expendable assets on the path to a vague, better future. A future in which there may be no room for ordinary humans at all. Surviving in the wasteland is about more than just fighting monsters and navigating politics. It's a daily struggle for food, water, and safety. After the US dollar became worthless, the primary currency across most of the wasteland became Nuka-Cola bottle caps. The reason for this unique economic phenomenon lies in a few key factors. 1. Finite supply. No new caps were being produced after the war, creating a limited, stable money supply. 2. Difficult to counterfeit. The technology to stamp and paint the metal caps was complex enough that wasteland artisans couldn't easily mass-produce fakes. 3. Historical backing. Their value was originally established by the water merchants of the Hub, a major trading city in California, who backed the value of a cap with a set amount of clean water. The system proved so successful that it spread across the continent. Regional currencies exist, like NCR dollars and Caesar's Legion denarii, gold and silver coins, but the bottle cap remains the universal medium of exchange. Old world medicine is almost entirely lost. In its place is chems, a collection of drugs, narcotics, and stimulants that help people survive but often lead to crippling addiction. Stim packs, pre-war auto-injectors containing a cocktail of painkillers, healing agents, and stimulants, can instantly mend a gunshot wound. Radaway and Rad-X, chems used to purge radiation from the body and to temporarily boost radiation resistance, respectively. Jet, the most common street drug in the wasteland, a powerful amphetamine-based stimulant. Legend says it was invented by a boy genius in the town of Myron from the fumes of Brahmin dung. It slows the user's perception of time, giving them an edge in combat, but is instantly and severely addictive. Psycho, a pre-war military combat drug designed to increase aggression and pain resistance in soldiers. Mentats, a chem that temporarily boosts intelligence and perception. Before the war, it was sold over the counter as a mental acuity enhancer. Despite the devastation, wastelanders have their forms of entertainment. Chief among them is the radio. The signals of pre-war radio stations, rebroadcast by dedicated enthusiasts, carry the music of the 1940s and 50s, creating a surreal contrast between the cheerful melodies and the grim reality outside. Charismatic DJs like Three Dog of Galaxy News Radio or the mysterious Mr. New Vegas become the voices of entire regions, commenting on events and keeping the survivors' spirits up. In the vacuum left by old faiths, new cults have emerged. The Children of Adam, a widespread cult on the East Coast that worships radiation and unexploded atomic bombs. They believe the Great War was not an ending, but a divine act of creation, the Great Division, which created a new universe inside every single atom. They consider radiation holy and seek division, their term for unity with Adam, which is achieved through death by irradiation. The Followers of the Apocalypse, a humanitarian and educational organization dedicated to preserving old world knowledge and using it for the good of humanity. They act as doctors, teachers, and historians, helping anyone in need regardless of affiliation. Their ideology is a blend of pacifism and anarchism. This detailed picture of the wasteland's factions and daily life shows that the world of Fallout is more than just a scorched earth. It is a complex tapestry of warring ideologies, new cultures, and a desperate struggle to define the future of humankind.